I didn't know that it would take me years to recover from it. That was really what changed my life.
And you have 13-minute flight to think about your life. And I hope that you really take that time to think about what you're gonna do.
Unless you've been in that situation, it's hard to bring the words.
Anybody who's gone through adversity is strong. Why? Because you know what they've been through.
Am I gonna impose more stress on my family? I have choices, right? And my choice is to go through this and make it fun because you have a choice.
A little boy, this beautiful, precious boy is born, and the doctor says to your father, "I'm sorry we didn't tell you so you could abort him." And that very little boy, whose mother even at first wasn't sure about holding him or touching, that little boy goes to change millions and millions of lives. That's the definition, dude, of redefining impossible, right? Like you've redefined. No one that day who says, "I'm sorry you didn't abort this baby," that doctor's not thinking, yeah, 74 countries, millions of people, thousands of lives and souls changed. No one would think that, right? So talk about that concept with you, about rising above and redefining that. I love the way you talk about this.
Look, I'm not going to say her name, but I'm not the only one with the story, right? We've got a history. What I've learned is I'm not the only one going through something, and I'm never telling anyone that I'm going through something worse than anybody. I tell teenagers all the time, I believe it's worse being in a broken home than having no arms and legs. And so someone who's gone through a broken home, I can't encourage them as much as someone who has come on the other side and say, I know how that feels. Me, like a limbless boy. That's the beautiful thing. I've met another limbless boy. I've met 30 people. Now he knows that if Uncle Nick can do it, then I can do it. And so in that story, there is someone local here actually who lives close to here. I won't mention her name. I'm about to see her tomorrow to be with her 2 boys. She has 2 boys from 2 different fathers because those fathers died at age 39 within 5 years of each other. One of cancer, one in a car crash. And so I'm just about to spend her boys are going in the pool with my boys tomorrow.
Wonderful.
And for me, when I looked at her second husband's funeral and I was able to speak at his memorial service, he was a dear friend of mine at 39 just now, only a couple months ago.
I'm sorry.
She said to me, if I went through this just to help one other widow. And it's that understanding that it's not, man, another punch, I need to get up. It's understanding, okay, wait a second. It's not a luck, chance, or coincidence that I'm watching a podcast with Ed and Nick and I feel my life is impossible. I'm depressed, I'm isolated. I haven't told someone what my dad did to me and I haven't even forgiven him. I haven't forgiven myself of the things I've done wrong. They're still trapped in maybe the failure or my success. My business is successful, Nick and Ed, but I still haven't got something and more of what I love. I haven't found that. And that's the purpose that we all need to find and say, look, when I don't get a miracle, it doesn't mean I can't be a miracle for someone else. And so millions of dollars or me helping little Daniel help him. When he was getting bullied at school, I went in my wheelchair and I ran them all over. No, I didn't. I went there and I did a quick 15-minute speech about bullying, right? And now, not only did he go through the rest of his elementary and middle school unbullied because now he accepts himself. People stop teasing him and they stop teasing everyone else. I'm like, hey guys, we're all valuable. We all have a purpose. We all have story and we can all make the world a better place. Money, drugs, sex, alcohol, pornography, fame, and fortune. If you put your happiness in temporary things, your happiness will be temporary. And so when you come back to the understanding that even the challenge is something that we shouldn't just say, I'm going to ignore it, I'm going to walk away from it, I'm going to never address that, I'm never going to... No, the sooner you address the things, even me, Ed, the speaker who's traveled around the world, it took me 10 years to forgive the family who didn't think that I was good enough for their family, for her. And now I have an amazing wife. She's half Japanese, half Mexican. We call that Japsican. We've got 4 children, 7, 4, and twin girls at 2. And I just want people to know it's not that I'm a speaker to say everything is possible. Just do it. No. Take one day at a time. Be thankful. Do your best. reframe the attitude for you on a daily basis. Don't be debilitated by panic. See what you know, learn what you don't know, and take a step forward.
So good, brother. Going back to the janitor at your school, I keep thinking of him. Isn't that interesting?
He's beautiful. And I just met up with him after all those years. I went to his humble home. His name is Arnold. I have talked about him publicly and in my book.
Yeah.
And he was the catalyst. And then after him, I just did speeches at schools.
Were you good at first?
No, I was terrible. I would actually never watch me speak if I recorded it because I'm so, how would you say, the biggest critic.
Yeah, me too. I still am that way.
And I was bad though.
Yeah.
I wasn't good. But I didn't want to listen to a motivational speaker because what I knew straight up, if I listen to other people's content, then I'm not authentic. And I needed to buckle down, make my own content. And after I did my first 300 or 400 speeches all across Brisbane, Australia, we then got me a coach. My teacher aide's husband was a coach, and he sewed into me 10 hours. And even when my parents said, "You're crazy, you'll never make money speaking, do a double degree in accounting and financial planning," and I did. My father gave me wonderful wisdom, Ed. He said, start an accounting firm, go into stock market, go into real estate, and get employees to be your hands and feet. I was 6 years old when he said, you need to become a millionaire to survive. No one knows that my nonprofit doesn't even pay for my caregivers and I have a family to feed. And so he told me entrepreneurially, you need to make it happen, do your best. Went into the stock market at 16, went into real estate at 19. He taught me, just go for it, but they never thought that I'd ever be a speaker.
That's crazy.
Crazy.
That's crazy. So that was my next question, by the way, is involving entrepreneurship. That's something that can be missed with you. You're a serial entrepreneur. You're a great entrepreneur. Off camera, all we were talking about was entrepreneurial ideas and the power of that. And so many people get the type of advice. I think my parents, I could sense, my parents didn't tell me you weren't going to make it as an entrepreneur. My dad now tells me I didn't think you were going to make it. They were so worried. I remember I loaded up a U-Haul and I was driving away to go to my first entrepreneurial venture. And my dad tells me as I was driving away, he was telling my mother, God bless him, he'll be back soon. Why is he doing this? And so I think a lot of people sense this lack of support from family, lack of belief, maybe even lack of belief in themselves. What are your attitudes about that? Do you think most people should be pursuing entrepreneurship, a side hustle of some type, or a nonprofit of their own? What are your thoughts about that, just to enrich their own life? How do you feel about that?
So you talk about it all the time. First of all, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. Sometimes you're in entrepreneurship, 9 to 5, every day. I'm just going to be the best person I can be at what I have. That's fantastic. If though there is a dream to then do a side hustle, go into real estate, do this, do that, I would say go for it, as long as first of all, your priorities are right. And so,
what are those priorities?
So for me, right, I actually achieved my goal and dream when my dad was dying of cancer. When I nearly died 2016.
Why did you almost die?
I had a negligent surgery go wrong in California after a benign tumor was removed.
Okay, wow.
Didn't sue him, we just move on. Money's money, doesn't matter. So then 2016, I nearly died. 2017, my dad died, and I had 4 children. Then at the time, I actually wanted to get to a week where we got the bread and butter, we're doing the nonprofit. I want to switch off my phone Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I did it. I did it. I had 17 staff at the time, and I did it for 6 months straight. And I was doing the status quo, but not enough oxygen or reserve in case some contracts cancel for cash flow on a rainy day. So for me, it's, first of all, you got to be true to yourself with what's most important to you. For me, faith, family, friends. If you're not really conversing, if you're not really connecting, I think us human beings were created to connect. Life is never better alone. Doesn't matter. I'm not talking about married or not married. I'm talking about connecting with human beings, number 1. Number 2, going after your biggest dreams. My dreams of being married and having kids, done. But really now when you have a wife, I'm looking, I'm like, okay, what's my next venture? I want her to bless the idea. And when you have a spouse who loves you, who respects you because you love and respect them, there's a margin that you make from week to week or month to month saying, look, I'm going to try and hustle. I'm getting ready for a 15-hour day stretch.
Yeah.
That I'm going to do 9 to 5. I'm not going to be able to do this and this and this as much, but I'm going to do this because I feel like this is what I need to do. If that is in unison for your family, you run for that. And for as long as your thoroughbred heart beats for that, you keep on knocking. But there are triggers of success, triggers of wait, pause, triggers of failure. At the trigger of failure, do you then go to an editor and say, what do you think I should do? No, your heart first will say eventually, let's wait, let's delay it. You know how timing is important.
Yeah.
Not just the outside, the inside. I can tell you right now, if Nick Vujicic started a podcast 5 years ago,
No.
now,
Now's the time.
oh my gosh, now is the time. So understanding and embracing that the timing and a closed door doesn't mean it's not going to open again, but really your spirit and your connection. If you're not married, then all you have to worry about is you, yourself, and you. And then say, okay, I don't have other mouths to feed. This is how much risk I'm ready to take. This is the attitude of the time I'm going to give myself. But hustle. Go for it. No one's going to make it happen except for you.
You, my friend, have become a gigantic success in your life and the things that I think matter, which is where you've measured it as well. But you have been a success as a family man. You've been success in your faith and also serving God. You've been a success financially. You've made a lot of money. You've traveled the world. You've influenced people. What has made you successful? You're not successful because you lack limbs, right? That's not why you're successful. But isn't it interesting? Like, I want to peel back.
Right,
So
right.
when Marshall Faulk, the NFL Hall of Famer, sat next to me, or Robert O'Neill killed Osama bin Laden, or Stephanie McMahon, who runs the WWE, or whoever I've had on the show that's maxing out certain areas of their life, okay? You're no different than them in your way. With the humility that I know you're going to answer it with, if we're being real, are you just like a psycho competitor? Is it your work ethic? Is it your ingenuity? Is it your anointing? Like, what is it that's made you max out so many different areas of your life? And I know that you feel like you haven't done it all the way that you want to, which we'll talk about next. But what is it about you? What's the special?
I think the key attitude is being present and being honest. And when you're a humble person who can humbly say you're a humble person, that you have no greed, ego, need to prove nothing to nobody, and you honestly look at yourself and say, okay, this is who I am. This is what I have. No point in wishing this, wishing that. This is what I'm going to do to my best ability. I actually feel like I have a unique edge on any other person only because, again, of the struggle. The struggle we're in before anybody leaves the room. So I became almost like an operator at age 7 or 8, timing everyone, reading body language before someone moves out of the room. Please, can you get me a glass of water, put a straw? And me remembering, wait a second, how do I do this? So I've been forced to figure it out and not to depend on someone else or something else. How can I figure it out and approach it from different angles? So when you have an attitude that approaches adversity, that is quite resilient. A resilient approach to adversity helps you to look at something and say, okay, these are the first 3 reasons why it seems extremely difficult. And the average person is going to say, okay, I have good enough reason not to. No. Einstein said, genius is when you're obsessed with impossible. And when you look at impossible, that's when you become fearless. And when you're fearless and you have the attitude and approach of any adversity, it doesn't mean you don't at least get a flavor on the tip of your tongue of panic or numbness in your mind. You go through, everyone's human, but quickly you say, wait a second, what about 4, 5, 6? What if I did this? What if I did that? And so in the physical, when I needed something from the bookshelf and I told my mom, I can't get it, can you get me? And she said, get it yourself. It was the best thing when I thought, why not just have that? Given this way, She gave me a task. And when I did that, in that mind, I would say reframing adversity. It's not a bad thing. It's not a barrier. It's a challenge. And people see me as strong. Anybody who's gone through adversity is strong. Why? Because you know what they've been through. If I am stronger because of what I've been through, you, if you will, more embrace the challenge today. Being present, honest, and giving yourself a shot. Sometimes we are the ones, Ed, that never gives ourselves a shot.
I totally agree with you. So tell them what happens. You're starting to make your comeback. Guys, this is one of the most amazing stories you're going to hear. So you're making your comeback, and what happens?
Well, I'd like to tell you my mantra of it's going to get rocky, and I'm going to tell you the mantra that my dad told me the whole time throughout my entire career, and me being very risky, was whatever you do, don't end up in a hospital because you'll die in there.
Wow.
And it just kind of rang in my head because I was riding dangerous horses and I was doing a lot of training, and then I started training around the clock because of the weather and I needed my bills paid, and I'm riding and taking chances that I shouldn't have had to take, just because I was not understanding my growth and I wasn't understanding my contribution. And so I was training really late at night in August in 2009. And I'm riding this horse that's fine. Everything's fine. We're training. Everything's normal. My poor staff member was there with her boyfriend, and it was just us lonely at night, lights on in the arena, and I'm going to train this horse. And as I was taking off around the arena, this horse slipped kind of in a mud puddle. And it was not a big deal, whatever. He slips, and he was feeling frisky. And you kind of know that when a horse behaves a certain way, he's feeling a little frisky. I should have known better. I should have taken more precautions, but I didn't. It's what I do for a living. What's the big deal? And I start laughing. I start giggling, and this horse starts to buck. And when I say buck, horses can play and buck, and they can crow hop and buck. This horse did something that's like a wild instinct. So he reared up. When he did, he broke all the bones on this side of my face. And when he came down to the ground, I'm still laughing. I'm like, okay, whatever. And in the cowboy industry, you got to be tough, And so I start to pull this horse up, and as I do, he hits me in the head again, and I skull fracture in 4 places. Of course, I don't know this. And of course, I'm not wearing a helmet because that's just not the cool, tough thing to do. And he begins to buck a little bit more, and I just decide that I'm going to pick a place off over here to jump off. Which is a terrible idea, but I picked a place to kind of jump off, and when I did, he kicked my feet about 13 or 14 feet in the air, and I landed straight down on my head. My legs just kind of flopped over, and I was unable to move. I was paralyzed right in that moment, and what a tough place to be in, because I was in this horrible relationship, and in a spot where I'm like, who's going to save me? So all I have is my career. If I get hurt, I can't make a living. How am I going to take care of myself? I'm in this horrible place. How am I going to get up? I got to get up. And so my friend came over. I was strapped down to a picnic table because I was too cheap to ride in an ambulance. So I get taken in a pickup truck on a picnic table to the hospital, and I get there and I start joking with the staff because it's just my way. And the lady in the front desk, my friend went in and asked for a gurney. And she said, "You don't need a gurney. That girl's out there telling jokes. Quit being so dramatic." So my friend that was a paramedic, they take me in and they finally get me a gurney. I could have walked, I think I could have. But when I got through the MRI machine and joking with the doctor that was helping me, I kept telling him, Hooters closes in 15 minutes and we're really close now. Like, let's go get some food. Tell me I have a concussion. Let's get out of here. Yeah. And he came back in the room. He said, "You have a 2% chance to live." Oh my God. And he said, "It's really been touching to get to know you." But he said, "The plane's running and you have 13-minute flight to think about your life. And I hope that you really take that time to think about what you're going to do now, because you're never going to ride horses again." Wow. And I'll never forget I don't know why I remember the guys' names. There were 2 guys named Russell that carried me to the plane and had me on this, in the seat collar and strapped to the table. And I get to...
Can someone get me some tissue, please? Someone grab one. Thank you. Yeah.
I get to the hospital room, and there's a whole nother story in the hospital, but I was told again I have a 2% chance to live, that I would never walk again. The neurosurgeon told me I was an absolute idiot for riding horses. Thank you. They don't stop. They come down and it's over.
It's beautiful.
So I had a second to think, and all I could think of was my dad telling me, you know, you're going to die in a hospital. You can't, don't die in a hospital. And I'm like, this is crazy superstition that you're going to die in a hospital. And I wake up the next day heavily drugged, obviously with a halo on. I had a girlfriend in the hospital tell me they're going to offer you 2 scenarios. You can get the surgery with the box in your neck, or you can get the halo. They're going to shave your head. You're going to have holes in your head. She said, go that way. I've seen this go a bunch of different ways. So when the doctor came in, I started bawling and I was like, I want the halo. You know, all I can think of is this cage on my head. I want the halo. At this point, I've called my mom and dad and told them that I was in a fender bender.
Oh my God.
Because they're with their grandkids in California. And I'm like, I'm in a fender bender. Everything's fine.
Amazing.
It's all fine. It's going to be fine.
Amazing.
And I've got to figure out a way to get out of this hospital. So I get these nurses that come in and I say, hey, how can I get out of here? Because now I've got this real embedded childhood fear that I'm going to die in a hospital. And I've got a damn good chance at this point with the situation I'm in.
That's true.
I could die in here. So shout out to all the amazing medical professionals, because it's just my own superstition. They did an amazing job. One came in, I said, I need to get out of here. And she laughed at me and she said, well, you know, when you can walk from one end of the hall to the other, then they'll let you out. But you're not going to do that. You got a long time. You need to settle in. You've got about 6 months you're going to be here. So the next nurse came in and she said, she laughed at me and she goes, you know, she's writing, oh, you've got 6 months. You know, you just like settle in. And then the next lady came in really late on shift and she was amazing. And if I could find her, I would give her everything I've got. She came in and I said, how do I get out of here? I got to get out of here. Like, I really got to get out of here. And she said, well, you walk to the end of the hall and you come back, you can get out. And I said, well, let's do that. How do we do that?
Wow.
And she said, well, you got to get up. And the big risk is, you know, if and when you fall down, you know, you can wiggle your fingers and toes and that's good. But when you get up, it's not going to feel like you thought it was. And you got all this equipment on your head, you're going to hit the ground and then you could die. And I was like, well, they've given me terrible odds at this point. So what the hell? Wow. And it was just very cool. This lady, that moment, she has no idea what she did for me, because she well, you know, I'm willing to try it. So she takes the belt and she ties it to the ceiling and I get up and I fall down just like she said I would. And then she said, if you just put one foot in front of the other, you know, you can get down to the end of the hall, and it could take you months, but we're going to try it.
Wow.
It took me about an hour and a half. And I got up and down the end of the hall. And I took all the people that didn't believe me, you know, the lady at the front desk and the nurses that came in, and I said, tomorrow I'm going to deliver flowers to each and every one of you guys because you didn't believe, and maybe I can change your mind because other people are going to come in here.
Oh my gosh.
And they need to know they can walk. And so the next day I gathered up all my strength. Mom at this point knows that I've been structurally destroyed, is what I was told. She got called from actually a newspaper outlet that was interviewing for rodeo publication that had leaked my medical records. So my parents found out in that way. So now I've got to do damage control and learn to walk. And I told Mom, I said, we got to go to the florist. I made him a promise. And so it was a really cool scene to watch all of these people that just didn't believe. Instead of me being angry at these people that didn't believe in my journey, to just shine a light on it and show them a different way. So I went and got floral arrangements for every single person that told me I couldn't do it. And I walked in there and I walked to each of their offices. And I think hopefully I gave them a gift that they can always have.
Wow. You're amazing.
You may not believe how I'm going to do it. But it gave me a lot of clarity too.
Wow.
Sometimes you're just not asking the right person.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
I think everybody should just literally go back and listen to all of this again.
Thank you.
You make this, honestly, I'm gonna tell you something. This is like such a blessing to be here with you.
Thank you.
It's a blessing to be here with you. Thank you. I'm really moved right now.
Thank you.
And I'm trying to not get too moved so that I can still ask you questions. But
it has a happy ending.
I know.
It's such a happy ending.
I know we're gonna go to there, but it's a happy ending because of everything you just said.
that there's so many things in there that we all have these people who don't believe in us and we're scared and
they're scared too. They're scared to tell me I can walk down the hall because they know I can't. They're scared too.
And maybe that's true for so many people, where you have these people in your life that are close to you that are maybe pulling you down. Maybe they're just scared for you. Maybe they're scared for them that you're going to leave them too, right?
Absolutely.
And everything that you have. And I just want to acknowledge you, like, you're freaking amazing.
Thank you.
Like, you're amazing. And I just, now, just to be clear with everybody, this break was very serious, very similar to Christopher Reeve, right? And I mean, not all that dissimilar injury, correct?
It's not. It's the same injury. When you break your C2, that's what controls your head going left or right. And you have a very, very, very small chance of making it out on the other side. With a lot of neck breaks, this would be the one that you really don't want to happen.
Unbelievable. I'm picturing you there. I mean, you tell the story so well, I can actually picture you. And I'm so proud of you. I mean, you're just remarkable. And everybody that just heard this, I told them they were going to be moved, but I didn't even know until you told it in front of me how much it would move me. It puts in perspective so many things that I think are big obstacles in my life that really aren't.
Sure.
And so many things that I think are a really big deal, and they're not. And that is a big deal.
You wake up and wiggle your fingers and your toes tomorrow, you're going to be like, oh, okay.
My
okay.
gosh.
We're all okay.
Just amazing.
How did getting cancer change your perspective on all this stuff? That's a life-changing, life-altering event. And what impact did it make on you?
So I had, I'd been working really hard, and I had, on Juniper Books, and I had young kids, and, volunteering for the kids' schools, and like just doing all the things all the time. I, raced cyclocross and mountain biking for a little while. Loved the Colorado mountains. So I was like doing all these things, a lot. Sounds a lot like I was playing, but I almost took like too hardcore of an approach to it. Sometimes it wasn't as much fun as it should have been. And then about 4 years ago now, was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma at stage 2, had 3 tumors in my chest. And I went through like a pretty heavy duty chemo regimen. It's about 100 hours a week.
Wow.
2 weeks off, repeated that cycle 6 times.
100 hours a week.
Yeah. So I was connected full time to a chemo pump. I had a portable pump that I carried around with me, and just would like make this really annoying sound all night, injecting the chemo into my system. So it took a big toll on me. And, a lot of people told me, slow down, give yourself the time to rest and recover that your body needs. And I was like, but I still have all these things to do. I still want to run my business, still want to be a good parent, still want to show that I'm brave and optimistic and all that. And honestly, like getting through the chemo was almost just like something on the to-do list. It was like, got through round 1, round 2, round 3. Like, it's pretty tough about it. I didn't know that it would take me years to recover from it. That was really what changed my life, was trying to recover from something I didn't know was going to be so hard to recover from. And through in a divorce, and my business, had suffered a little bit during those times. So I was like rebuilding that. So I was like, I got to figure out, with my limited time, energy, and attention, I got to figure out how to navigate my way through all these things. And that's when I kind of looked back and I thought, how have I done this in the past before I was sick? Maybe while I was sick too. It wasn't when I like tried to do it all at one time. It was when I just brought my attention to one thing at a time, whether it was creating a new product or working with a client or, doing a piece of writing. Do it well, take a break, go for a walk, go skiing, go biking, spend the afternoon with my kids, then come back refreshed and do the next thing with my full attention. So I just kind of codified it into a philosophy about life that, I thought a lot of people could relate to and could put into place to, achieve some benefits and goals.
On some really deep level, do you think having cancer, I'm just thinking about the premise of everything you're talking about. You get cancer, you have to sort of unplug from things you were doing to almost be present doing that. And I'm wondering if by that unplugging and getting kind of observational about your life to some extent, even though you're fighting and you're sick, I'm assuming it made you much more grateful for people or an opportunity or even your business, right? And if that is true, then could it not be true that this unplugging and being present in one area actually elevates your gratitude and focus level in another one because of the absence of it, just the escape from it for a while? I know that sounds really overly philosophical and pretty deep, but I actually think there's something to that when you're disconnected from something temporarily, your appreciation for it grows and your focus on it can ultimately grow.
I'm definitely more grateful as a result, of going through what I went through. But I'm also more grateful just by being in the present moment.
Right. Yes.
So people don't have to go through something that's a wake-up call or a health scare or, the loss of something important to them to figure out like, hey, this is a pretty amazing life. Like, and if I can appreciate where I am, what I'm doing and who I'm with right now, like I can be grateful for it. And then I could always come back to whatever that, you're doing in that present moment. So I'm grateful, like things worked out. I had a type of cancer that was treatable, considered curable. And then I'm healthy 4 years later and have just, in the past year or so started to get my full energy back. It took a while and I'm grateful for like the perspective that it gave me. I always assumed like just because of my family history, I'd have cancer in my 70s or something, and then, but to have it in my 40s and to be young enough to recover and have, the second half of my life ahead of me and be able to do something, meaningful with it and share some things with the world that are important to me that I've figured out that may, benefit others. I'm extremely grateful for that opportunity.
What is the connection between, if any, monotasking and mindfulness? Mindfulness is coming up more and more on my radar. I practiced it for quite a while, but is there a connection between monotasking and mindfulness, if any?
Definitely. So, I've studied mindfulness and yoga, meditation, and things like that over the years. I think what I decided with this book was to basically put things in a little bit more practical, simple,
right,
secular terms, if you will.
Yeah.
To make it more accessible to people who might say, oh, this sounds like mindfulness. I'm not, not going to step over that, or I'm not going to go to a yoga class, or, this sounds too Eastern for me. Because I think the reality is that, the lessons have always, like, it's always been hard for human beings to pay attention. Long before the iPhone, smartphones, like there were wild animals and, dangers in the night and, natural disasters. And so like the history of prayer and meditation and like bringing your awareness to the present moment has always been there. It's been there for thousands of years. So however you get people to like stop thinking about the past and the future and think about the now is helpful. So I decided to come up with a different terminology and phrase the problem not as like, you're not being mindful, or you need to meditate more, or you need to go on this retreat. It's like, no, are you multitasking, or can you monotask? Can you stop doing 6 things and do one? Do it with your full attention. Does it feel good to you? Great. Keep doing it. Were you more productive? Great. Did you make fewer mistakes? Awesome.
Yeah. Clarity of thought is one of the things that's brought to me. I was saying to somebody, I was telling them I was going to interview you. And I said, maybe I'm weird about this, but I said, when I was a little boy, it was a very, kind of chaotic home for a while. Great home, but chaotic. I feel sometimes like I don't give my family credit for being as good as it was, but my dad was an alcoholic. And man, did I love when I could just shut the door in my room and be alone and unplug from what was going on out there. And then I remember wanting a tree house when I was a little boy. I don't know if any of you can relate to this, just a little place that was mine that I could be quiet in. And to this day, when I'm on the road traveling, there's a moment when I get in my hotel room, and I don't know if anybody relates to this, and I shut the door and I'm alone in there and my blood pressure drops and I'm at peace. And it's actually, I believe it's because a lot of the things that I would be focused on are on the other side of that door. And I have some alone time. I like when I'm in my car and I shut the door and I'm alone and I'm there with my thoughts and I'm present with myself. If you experience any of those things, like I just described at all, I'm telling you some form of monotasking, mindfulness. Your description is perfect of your book. It's exactly what it is. It's a layman's version to some extent that's understandable and tangible about mindfulness. If any of that stuff feels good to you, this will feel great to you. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about, because you are a book publisher, But you said something that I just have grown to believe, which is you said reading is a form of self-care. Would you elaborate on it? Because I think a lot of people go, well, the reason I listen to your podcast is I don't like to read. I like to listen. There's a difference, though, to actually reading something. Just elaborate on that a little bit.
So reading, requires us to bring our full attention to the printed page. And in this example, I'm thinking about true, printed books. And like we talked about before, like if your attention wanders, you miss something. Mm-hmm. But if you give your attention to a book, the studies have shown like your stress level comes down. Your attention is locked into one place. Mm-hmm. And there's also all sorts of benefits, that the neuroscience has shown just about like how we create these connections in our mind about what we're reading it. And then we're seeing the characters and their relationships to each other. If you read The Lord of the Rings, like you're imagining the distances, and the geography of, different characters and their journeys, that has all sorts of psychological benefits. So it is really a practice of self-care that's good for our mental health to spend some time reading. And you could combine it, with that alone time, like you talked about, having a reading chair, having, a place, maybe you even do it, at work for a few minutes. You just take a few minutes to yourself and read. And then it just tends to reset our minds. One analogy I use for people that are old enough to remember, like when our computers had to be defragmented. Yep. And you like see a little graphic of like, oh, these are all, pink and green or whatever color they were. And then they become the same color. Like that's what happens in your brain when you read a book, like you're putting it back together.
So good.
So I think it's great for us. And even if you don't consider yourself a reader, like just pick up a book about something that interests you and read a little bit. Could be about Harley Davidson motorcycles or baseball or, travel. Like there's a book for everybody.
So you are an expert now, though, on some difficult times. Mm-hmm. So smiling through.
Talk about smiling through. I smiled all the way through it.
So guys, here we go. This is where you just go, wow. Okay. So I want to talk about, defining moments in life. So those of you that don't know, Maria was diagnosed with a brain tumor in 2017, I believe, on your 39th birthday, actually, correct?
That's when I had surgery.
Surgery on your 39th birthday.
Yeah, it was like 2 months before I got diagnosed.
And prior to that, I'll let you tell it, but prior to that, this is interesting. Your mother was also diagnosed with brain cancer prior to that. And my recollection in researching it was when it happened, you actually prayed and said, Lord, can I please have this? Because I'm the fighter, I'm the strong one. Is that true?
Yeah, it was challenging with my mom at some point, and I was so tired and sad, and I just said, God, I wish you gave this to me. I could have handled it better. And then boom, I got diagnosed with a brain tumor. So when we talk about how powerful words are in the universe and all of that, like, listen, medically, my neurosurgeon believes it had been there for probably a decade, and I actually feel like I know the inciting incident of it. I know I was going through a really toxic situation, and I remember getting all these rashes, and the doctors didn't know what they were. But now when I look at some of the deeper research with the tumor that I have, which is called a meningioma, it makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, I did. You never want to see people that you love in pain. And I know now how tough I am. And I was just kind of like, I would fight harder. My mom fights in her way, and I have to accept the way she fights now. But I'm like, come on, get up, like walk, keep moving, like don't give in. And so it's challenging because the brain, once it gets damaged, it's hard to overcome that damage. And so radiation and the cancer itself and the chemos and all of this stuff, we've actually been very successful against it. So she was diagnosed late August 2016 with stage 4 brain cancer. It's called glioblastoma. It's one of the deadliest cancers you can get. I think the median life expectancy is like 6 to 12 months. Luckily, I didn't read that in the moment. I was supposed to get on a plane that next day to London to interview Renee Zellweger for Bridget Jones' Diary 2, I believe it was. And I got a phone call from my dad, and they said they found a tumor, and I collapsed. And I ended up somehow getting packed by a friend and sent to the airport. The last seat on the plane, flew to the East Coast, and within 2 days, we got that diagnosis. So I had to become an expert really fast. And luckily, with my position in this business, I was able to get the best doctors together, and I created like my board of brain tumors, my board of directors. And I got opinions from everybody, and I used their guidance at first. But what I realized along the way, and my biggest lesson in all of this, is that you have the guidance inside of you that you really need to get through a major life crisis or a major disease too. So I'm not a doctor, but what I've realized is my gut instinct and my intuition for my mom has been the most powerful and most successful tool I've had to keeping her alive now, almost 4 years later, to all of the doctors' surprise. And it's one of the things I coach people on the side. So I have had over 100 brain tumor patients at this point in the last 3 years that I've coached through brain surgeries and cancers. And then I've dabbled with other cancers too, because I think the same methods apply, and it's things that people aren't telling you, right? When you get sick, you lay your everything at the foot of a doctor who has maybe 15 minutes with you every time they see you. And they don't have the time to look at you as an individual, to really look at the full picture. That's why people talk about holistic, but they get the wrong idea of holistic. Got to look at what started this. And usually with cancers, there's an emotional component that people are overlooking. There's a trauma, there's a deep-rooted pain that has manifested over the years, and then compile that with like poor diets and stuff is just, has manifested into something physical. So with my mom, I knew instantly we needed to deal with the emotional. I knew we needed to deal with the spiritual and, of course, the physical. And part of the physical were things that they would not recommend necessarily. I started researching the ketogenic diet. And most doctors kind of, they're like, oh, we see patients' families, torture them all the time. Just let her eat what she wants. And I'm like, so are you basically giving in? So her neurosurgeon, when I suggested it, he said, listen, we don't have the evidence to support this, but I think it's a good idea. To me, it made sense instinctively. If you are pumping sugar into my body in an MRI to see where the cancer is, okay, let's avoid sugar. So I modified the diet because I didn't think the ketogenic diet was healthy on its own anyway, because I can't imagine ingesting that much fat is really smart. So I said, okay, we'll use the fats as a cheat since you can't have the sugar. But we're really just going plant-based. Hippocrates, let food be thy medicine. And so I did a lot of this stuff, and then I supplemented her, because I also think the other thing that people forget with cancer is that you can't take an ailing body, pump all these toxins and all these treatments in, and not try to support it at the same time to handle all of that. And so for me, supplementing her body with as much as I could to offset some of these things, whether it was kidney supplements or liver supplements or brain supplements or just vitamin C, high dose vitamin C, and all of these things, adding marijuana, all of these things made such a big difference. And then also, like I said, using your gut instinct. And so I had pre-researched a facility in Mexico, knowing there might be a moment as a good producer that you might need it, and you don't want to be in that frantic moment. What do I do? You want to be like, oh, we're in this moment. Got it. I know where I'm going. And so we did a lot of that. And ironically, when I took her to Mexico, I had been suffering from a lot of pains in my head too at the time. And so I went and I got an MRI that I had been putting off, because at some point I realized I'm crazy. I went to the doctor and I said, I'm getting these headaches, and I'm slurring my speech on set, and all this weird stuff's happening. And then I looked at him and I go, oh, shit. He goes, what? I go, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I think I have a brain tumor like my mom. And I diagnosed myself. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I got tested, and the day I checked my parents into Mexico, I literally unpacked them, put all their things away, set them up because we were going to be there for 2 weeks. And the doctor called me and he's like, I don't know how to tell you this, but you have a brain tumor as well. And so I instantly started filming myself because I wanted to remember how I handled the scariest, worst moment that you're ever going to, have. So I documented the entire journey, and I made a conscious decision. So funny that you pointed this out, and this is so crazy, but I made a conscious decision to go through it with humor and positivity, because it was such a crazy, lightning striking kind of moment. I've had the head researcher in the country say it was literally like lightning striking. This doesn't happen. Mother-daughter tumors isn't a thing. And so my best friend was horrified, but even I had this is a good one. So I had RSVP to an event for my mom's neurosurgeon, Dr. Keith Black. And it was to take place on June 7th. And so then I get diagnosed. I end up in his office. He's like, I can't believe this is happening. He's like, here are the dates that I have available. It was like June 2nd. I'm like, oh, I have a shoot June 8th. Okay, cool. We'll do June 8th. So June 8th happened to be my birthday. And I was like, okay, this is happening for a reason. This is my rebirth. I'm changing my whole life, whatever. So he looked at me and he's like, so that event, June 7th, honoring me, he's like, obviously you're not going to come. And I go, no, I'm going to come. And he's like, what? I'm like, I said, I'm going to come. And I'm going to need the distraction. So whatever. So now, mind you, I go to the event.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm seated with my family at the table. We're the only ones that know. And my best friend who flew out, and God bless her, she stayed with me for a whole month while I healed and whatever. And we're watching them honor Dr. Black, this like who's who event in Hollywood. And they're showing him operating on people's brains on the big screen. And I'm like, yeah, that's going to be me in 4 hours.
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding?
Literally, I saw Dr. Black as, we were talking before the sit down part. And I go, hey, I'm watching you, 2-drink minimum. You're in my brain tomorrow.
Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot there. First off, by the way, if you're not watching the YouTube, she smiled through that whole story, which most people, when they tell you about their mom's cancer, their brain surgery, guys, it's a huge key. I'm telling you, it's a huge key. Okay, a lot to unpack there. I'm going to touch on a couple of things you said there. Is it your contention that you believe, and I'm not asking you, Maria's not a medical doctor, guys. I'm asking you your opinion as someone who's had a mother with stage 4 brain cancer, and you had a brain tumor that was operated on. Your contention that you believe there's some sort of trauma or emotional stress that might induce a condition like that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, think about it. Stress kills. We all know that, right? So stress is deteriorating the systems in your body, right? Just like poor diets deteriorating. And then all of those things start to take shape over time, right? It's like an accumulation of bad choices. And they just eventually catch up with you. So I always say, okay, cool, we can abuse our bodies and eat donuts and junk all through our 20s. In our 30s, things start to shift. And then you get like a thyroid condition. Oh yeah, thyroid condition. Oh, that's easy. I just take a pill for that. And then it just accelerates if you don't make the changes as the bricks hit you on the head, right? The thyroid issue is the brick on the head. Must change. Too much stress on the body, too much poor whatever, lack of sleep, whatever it is that you're not doing right or well is going to accumulate. And then I do believe that the worst effect eventually is the cancer. I just see it with people. And honestly, after over 100 conversations with people, the second I say, so, okay, we talked about diet, we talked about the treatments, we talked about the supplements. Okay, what about the emotional part? And they're like, oh, how did you know? And I'm like,
I think I must say my dad's got cancer. He's had it for many years and multiple radiations, multiple chemos. And that my dad has what they call liposarcoma. And I've discussed this a little bit with my dad, and he's probably going to watch this or hear this, him and my mom. So we haven't discussed it to the extent that I'm going to say it here. But now he's getting uncomfortable before he knows what I'm going to say. But I have wondered, my dad, I think, would be the first to tell you that he's sort of a chronic worrier and has lived on a lot of stress, some real, some sort of magnified. And I have wondered, because there's no really genetic history in my family of that type of cancer, I have wondered if it was a stress-induced, worried-induced, anxiety-induced, just cumulative over years, or if there was one significant event. And so, needless to say, everybody, I think the lesson here is that even if you think you're great at coping with stress and you thrive in it, like us achievers that are mainly listening to this, there is a toll that it's taking on you physically to some extent, whether it's aging you or giving you an illness or a disease. Mm-hmm. And we need to do more self-care. We need to do more things to inoculate ourselves from stress. Next question I have, I'm curious, but by the way, I'm enthralled with this. Like, who the heck has a mother with stage 4, has a brain tumor, has the surgery on her birthday, and the night before is at her neurosurgeon's honoring? This is like, what? Like, hello. But
I was singing jingles the night before. I have video of this. I was like, "'Twas the night before surgery, and all through the house, not a creature was happy, not even a mouse." And I have video of my best friend like sneering at me, and then my husband looking at me with the death stare. And then as we're driving in the minivan to the hospital the next day, I was like, "It's my birthday party, bitches!" Everyone's like wanting to murder me, but I'm like, what am I gonna do? Like, am I gonna impose more stress on my family? I have choices, right? And my choice is to go through this and make it fun, because you have a choice. Like, I had a choice. And to me, it's another path. So if someone's listening to this, go through whatever crisis you're going through, make your choice how you're going to do it. I was cracking jokes all the way through, and it made it easier for me. It was like smiling through the injection. Yeah. It made it better for me.
I'm just curious, brother, with all the resources and tools you have, how did you deal with such a difficult year last year? Whether, if you don't mind speaking about how it impacted you, and then maybe what you did to use your terminology, sort of rehab yourself out of it.
Yeah, man. I started to cry talking about it. Yeah. But last year was the hardest year of my life. I thought losing football was going to be the hardest time in my life. The last podcast, that was it, right? Mm-hmm. But last year, not to spend too much time on it, but the month of March was a horrible month. And I say that at that time. I look back and I think it's a beautiful month. And I'll maybe get into those reasons why. But, I lost my mom. And I don't like to use the word loss, by the way. I gained an angel. So I gained an angel March 7th. March 9th, 2 days later, right across the street, my baby girl, 4-year-old girl, I get over there and she's unconscious. She got hit in the head with a rock from a lawnmower 2 days later. And, she's bleeding out her head. I'm holding her, and it's so hard to explain. I feel like unless you've been in that situation, it's hard to bring the words. And in that moment, I'm like, man, what is going on? Get to the hospital in the ICU, and I get a text, and they try to prevent it from me. But my dad was like, "Hey, I want to tell you, I know how you are. Your grandmother's in ICU now too." That same day. My grandmother ended up passing 2 weeks later. Wow. And so this is what I realized. It's funny how life makes you practice what you preach even more and brings it right to your front doorstep. Yeah. And got to be real with you, Ed, a lot of stuff was starting to die when my mother died, when my grandmother died. My passion was starting to die. My purpose was starting to die. And, there was a lot of people speaking into my life and giving me the right words, and it helped. But it was one person close to me that told me something, and I really needed to hear it. She said, "Trent, your life will never be the same." And as hard as that was to hear, I needed to hear. Because in that moment, I said, well, either I'm going to stay in grief and suffering for the rest of my life, or I'm going to try to create this new normal. And I'll tell you the thing, man, Ed, that really turned the page for me was losing my mother. Because my mother, man, she was my biggest supporter. I when it comes to rehab time and everything, she spoke this into my life. I remember looking in the mirror. It was about maybe 5 months, man, after March, or probably September, something like that. I was looking in the mirror, gain weight, trying to fight myself out of this silent battle and out of this struggle while trying to be there for everybody else. And it was just tough. Looking in the mirror and I said, man, like, is this it? And I pictured my angels, my grandmother and my mother that sacrificed so much, that ran their race of life so hard to give me, my brothers and my kids, their grandkids, great grandkids, the lead on life is what I say. It's like a race, right? Some people don't do their part and you hand off the baton and your kids or grandkids got to play catch up. But my mother and grandmother, they gave me the lead on life. And I was just picturing them vividly, just crying, saying, I didn't die for you to die with me. I didn't die for your purpose to die with me. I didn't die for your spirit to die with me. I ran my race, celebrate my life, and use this as a reminder, for one, that tomorrow isn't promised. Forever comes with an expiration date. And a lot of us, we talk about forever. We don't realize forever will come to an end at some point. Use this to make you feel more alive. Use this to make you get the most out of life. Use this to make you go harder for your purpose and for your mission. Because if you don't do that, then my death is in vain and everything I sacrifice goes to waste. And in that moment, I asked myself that same question. When I die, do I want to be the reason why my kids suffer, why my kids lose their passion, why my kids stop going forward? And excuse my French, I said, hell no. Right. And in that moment, the switch flipped for me. And immediately that grief started to turn into greatness in my life. And now I'm using that as motivation instead of a limitation.
That is so powerful. That's hard to move on even from that point, man. Like that affects me very deeply. When it happened, you got a million messages, but after a little time, I did tell you, I said, because when we did the show the first time, my dad was sick and we were both talking about, man, I don't know if I lose my dad. And you're like, man, if I lose my mom. And then it happened for both of us. And, I just remind you of what I've told you. It's just, I'm just so proud of you because I believe you're honoring your mom and your grandmother with your life. And so many of you that are listening to this, they don't have to pass away for you to decide today you're going to begin to honor these people that have been angels in your life with who you become and what you do and the difference you make and the courage you show. And if they have passed away, you can make that decision right now. I'm going to begin to honor them with who I am and what I do here. And that legacy piece you say too, as when I do pass away, I think a lot of times, Trent, people think everyone else is going to die except them. It's some weird thing in our minds, everyone else, they're going to die. I'm probably, for some reason, it doesn't dawn on us that we too will die someday, our physical bodies. And I want, I would love that if my son were on a show someday, he thinks about me the way you think about your mom, the way that I think about my dad as an example of somebody that I want to honor. And so I hope all of you hold on to that. I just think that was an incredible point. It makes me Kevin Hart says sometimes, say it with your chest. I felt what you said in my chest there. I still do right now. But now there's the angels in our life. And then there's the people that aren't angels in our lives. This is part of that peace thing. Yeah. And everybody says all the time, hey, remove toxic people from your life. But here's the truth. Almost nobody ever does it. No. Almost nobody does it. They just don't. They go, I'm going to get rid of these toxic people in my life. Yeah, but you don't. You don't. And I don't know if it's a lack of courage or the ability to do it, or if people feel like, well, then I'm going to be alone and that's worse than this toxic person in my life. But talk about, because you're just so profound about this, the way you say it. What do toxic people do to us? And then how do we find the strength do we remove them? Do we keep them at a distance? Like, what are your thoughts about toxic people stealing that peace I want this year, or we all want?
Absolutely. I'll just ask everybody this question. And this question seems a little bit straight up and harsh, but it's the reality. If you're in a situation where your environment sucks, your environment's terrible. And I want to be clear, Ed, sometimes we're the toxic people. Sometimes we got to look ourselves in the mirror and make sure we're not that person and take that responsibility. But once you understand that, you have the things around your life, you got to ask yourself, picture everything in your life as soil, right? Your environment is soil. The people that you're around, the places you take your life, everything is soil. I believe that each and every one of us, we're a seed. We're a seed of greatness. We're a seed of goodness. We're a seed of, a person being legendary. We have all of those qualities in us. I believe God made us that way. What happens is a lot of us, we put our seed in toxic soil and we wonder why we're not producing the right harvest for our life, right? We wonder why we're producing weeds. We wonder why we're producing things that end up dying. So I want to ask the person listening to this right now is what type of soil are you putting your seed in? Because a great seed in bad soil will not produce good fruit, will not produce a good harvest. And you got to be real with yourself. Do you want to live the rest of your life unhappy? Do you want to die unhappy? Do you want to die miserable? Because like you said, that a lot of people are afraid. They're afraid of confrontation. They're afraid of what people are going to say once they make that decision, because we know how it is. People will start to make you feel like you're the bad person, no matter what you have done for them. They'll point out all the things you didn't do and not all the things you did do.
Yes.
I think people are also, they're afraid to be alone. But you have to understand this about the journey. Sometimes it takes being perfectly lonely, because I say perfectly, to understand what being perfectly loved feels like. So it took me in my darkest moments, in my loneliest times, to understand God's true love for my life. And once I realized the love that he had for me, once I realized how he created me, it became a lot easier. So I gained more confidence. I knew my worth, and I went on this journey of being the greatest me. And one thing about the journey that's true, the journey will always be loyal to giving your life what it needs. So as I walked down the right path, it was lonely at first, but as I'm climbing this mountain, I seen somebody else that was climbing the mountain in the same direction. I seen somebody else as I went a little higher that was climbing the mountain in the right direction. And then you build this tribe of like mindsets. And so, another illustration, just really quick, Ed,
please.
It's like I'll just put it like this. My neighbor, like 2 houses down, we're in Texas, right? We're like in Dallas, it's hot. So we moved here and my neighbor has like a palm tree. And it was about fall time. So the palm tree, it looked good, right? And so when winter hit, the palm tree was terrible, right? The palm tree was bad. The palm tree withered away, it died. They had to cut the top off. It looked terrible. And it made me realize this truth. And I want people to understand this. When you look at your life and you look at yourself as that palm tree, right? You're beautiful. Everybody wants you. You're a popular tree. But if you put yourself, right? If you put that palm tree in New York, that palm tree wouldn't ever reach its full potential. That palm tree wouldn't be a palm tree. It would be an ugly tree nobody would buy. But if you put that palm tree in Cali, you put that palm tree in Florida, you put that palm tree in Hawaii, you put that palm tree in Puerto Rico, in the right environments, that palm tree flourishes. That palm tree looks beautiful. So with your life, you're that palm tree. You have all those great qualities. But if you're in the wrong environment, you will never meet the potential that your life has.